Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. A little update for you, and we're going to talk about why this is garbage. It's a little breezy outside, so if you hear wind or things flapping around, that's just the way it is in West Texas this time of year. So bear with me on that. I did a video on this, building this blade a little bit ago, and I've received an awful lot of questions or ideas or suggestions around keeping or saving this blade, because at the end of that video I explained that it was not up to par and I wasn't going to be able to finish it and sell it, and so it was basically scrap. If you want to watch that video, the whole build, pretty cool build, check out the link up in here somewhere and watch that video. I used 3/16 inch W1 high carbon steel cubes to forge weld this in a canister with powdered steel added and nickel powder added to that, and forge welded it all together. And this is the pattern we got, so pretty cool. I haven't seen anything like this before, and I was pretty excited about how it's turning out. Not to mention the fact that, you know, this being like a freestyle blade, just the design of the knife itself, I was really liking how it was turning out. But as I talked about in the original video, as I was about halfway through the etching process, or maybe nearing the end of the etching process, I started seeing some unsettling things on the blade here. And I gave close-ups of the video, close-up pictures, and it's little sort of striations or little what look like cracks around the edges of various portions of the steel, or the pieces of steel in this pattern welded, forge welded blade. And when I first saw that, I knew it wasn't good, and I realized that the steel had been burned, had been overheated, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to finish the blade. But when I put the video up, or when I ended the video and explained to you guys why I couldn't finish the blade or wasn't going to sell it, etc., I was still kind of mentally processing and kind of piecing together, you know, what had happened and why specifically, you know, this wasn't going to be any good. Because in the video I did do a 2x4 chop test, and it retained its edge appropriately, and it obviously didn't break, and so it performed under that test just fine. And so a lot of people have been asking, well, you know, a couple different comments. One, either, well, it performed fine and it seems like it, you know, came out fine, or secondly, why don't you use it for an art piece or something that won't be finished, or maybe like a light duty piece. And so I want to address both of those ideas and why I'm not going to do either of those. So the first one being that it seems like it came out fine. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it did. But I need to explain further about what the issue is, because again, I wasn't hadn't fully processed it when I put the original video out. So what we're seeing here on these little striations on the boundaries of these pieces of steel in this blade are burnt steel. And specifically, that's where the carbon is starting to get burnt out of the steel. And with a high carbon steel, so there's a lot of different metallurgical stuff, so I'm just going to pull a few different things together. First of all, the melting point and the forge welding, and thereby the forge welding point of high carbon steel is lower than mild steel, for example, because the carbon content, and I don't know why this is exactly, but just metallurgically speaking, it lowers the temperature of those conditions. And so you can forge weld, for example, a couple of pieces of high carbon steel together, or a piece of high carbon and mild steel together at a lower temperature than you could two pieces of mild steel. It's just the way it works. So without getting into it, because I don't even know specifically why does the presence of carbon in the iron make the temperature lower. I don't know that, but I just know that it does. This may not have happened if this had been mild steel, but on top of that, carbon does burn out at a certain temperature of the steel, and in doing so, it's kind of like your sparklers on the 4th of July, or if you've watched various different like videos or something where people are forge welding, like the Tamahagami steel, for example. Oftentimes they'll forge weld at a very high heat where they're starting to burn the carbon. You'll see it sparking off of there. Excuse me. That's what was happening here. Now, if it's a part of the process, and if you're like refining some very raw material and you have to forge it at a very high heat like that, forge weld at a very high heat, that's a little different. What we had here is some good steel and then kind of went backwards and ruined it. Now, in the process, yes, everything forge welded back up. There is no actual cracks. There is no actual, fissures or voids. It's all solid again, but it doesn't change the fact that carbon was starting to burn out of the steel. And that is why the little striations are light colored, because again, if you, a lot of people have in the past made pattern welded steel out of mild and high carbon steel. The mild steel in the etchant etches as a light color, not bright like the nickel content steel, but it's a light kind of ghostly white color as opposed to the dark high carbon steel. And so that's all consistent with what we have here. So I was kind of processing this over the last week or so, because I remember when I was forge welding the canister, and I've never had this happen before, it actually came open. Well, I shouldn't say I've never had that happen before, but not for this reason. It came open. I don't know if it just got so hot. And so the first forge welding pass that I did on it, the canister was open, and so oxygen got in there. If the canister hadn't failed, but I think it failed because of the high heat that I had it under, but if it hadn't failed, then I don't think we'd have this issue. And while it would still be a high temperature, I think we would have been fine, and then the ensuing forging process would have, and normalizing, etc., would take care of any exploded grain structure or enlarged grain structure. You're going to have some enlargement for that process regardless, and so you work through that and correct it. But the actual burning of carbon out of the steel, that's too far for my standards. But if the canister hadn't failed, I don't think we'd be sitting here right now. So why was it at such a high temperature? I explained that in the original video too. And so to be honest, the last couple of weeks in the shop have been kind of rough, because I've had some high points and some successes, like the stainless San Mai. That was great. I think that was the main one. And then a bunch of failures. And it started with this one here, because I modified my forge and it runs hotter now. And prior to that, and that's the great thing about a Venturi burner forge, or just having your forge adjusted, I guess, whatever kind of forge you have, to where a gas forge is, I guess what I mean. You can adjust it to where the temperature stays consistent. And that's been my experience with every other Venturi burner forge that I've had that I didn't modify. And you can just put your piece of steel in there, and you can just leave it in there at whatever pressure or whatever setting you have it on, and it's not going to reach above the temperature, or to a temperature where it's actually going to start burning the steel. You're going to get, a lot of forge scale and decarb, obviously, if you leave it in there, but not actually burning the steel. And so that's one nice thing about a gas forge once you have it dialed in. But I modified my forge, and it runs hotter now, which is both good and bad, but it's bad when you aren't taking that into account. So I left this canister in. I explained this all in the first video, but anyway, I burnt it. I burnt the steel and ruined the project. Oh, so why can't I just, so it obviously performed okay, right? I mean, yeah, it did, right? But I can't finish it and sell it even for that reason. I mean, because anybody who understands what they're looking at is going to see that the steel has been at some point been compromised. And since heating the steel to the point where it was burning is not part of the process in this case, and like I said earlier, that might be part of the natural process to some different techniques and stuff like that. Not in this case. And so somebody can look at that like, the guy burned his steel, and it's been compromised at some point. It's a visual evidence of the steel being compromised at one point, and so you just can't put that out there. And then secondly, as far as the art piece goes, or a light duty use piece goes, I can't do that either because I have no control over what happens to this blade if I send it out the door, after I send it out the door. And so somebody might get it and they might put it on their wall, and then a year down the road, their buddy comes in like, oh, it's so cool, let me buy that from you for whatever, $250. And the guy needs the money or whatever, I don't know. So the buddy takes it home, sticks a handle on it, and goes and sells it at a gun show, and then, or whatever, just different things. Like, you just have no control over it, and then pretty soon you've got a blade out there that's subpar, in my opinion, and it doesn't have my mark on it or anything, but obviously there's the video, like, I made the blade, so anybody could figure that out if they really wanted to. So those are the reasons that I can't do that. Excuse me. Silver Lining to the Cloud, one of my great longtime clients, reached out after the video, and he wants a buoy in the same pattern of design, because it is a really great pattern. So I'll be keeping this for a template, and that is what this will be. So it'll be probably the fanciest pattern or template that I have in my shop. Anyway, that's the story on the expensive piece of garbage. I mean, expensive template. Let's look at the bright side here. So yeah, as a result of all these stuff with the forge, and the silver lining also was that I was like, well, okay, I think I can get that forge hot enough to forge weld stainless steel San Mai, which is pretty cool because that's something I've been wanting to do for quite a while. And without having to build a new forge yet, I've actually been able to do that. So I actually just did one today. But in the meantime, so something else I'm doing in the shop here, for those of you who are interested, I've really been trying to get stock built up, and that is what I've been doing, as well as working on custom orders, as well as juggling YouTube. And it's a lot. And I've been trying to get some San Mai chef's knives, kitchen knives in stock. And as a result, I've been kind of trying to dial in my San Mai technique, and I think I've scrapped like 7 blades in the last week or so because of that. And so I think I have the ratio of the steel jacket and everything dialed. It's just a bunch of different things that I won't waste your time on or bore you with. But all that to say, it's been I've dialed some techniques in. But I guess that's the hard won experience and knowledge that you aren't going to get any other way. And it's good though, because I mean it stinks, but at the same time it's like, well, you can really, I know what this knife is and what it's capable of, and the quality of it, because you eat that like. I'm my own employer, and so if you screw something up at work, then your boss is going to be unhappy because he has to foot the bill, right? Unless you work for somebody that takes it out of your paycheck, which probably isn't very common. I don't know, but I mean, in effect, it comes out of my paycheck, and so it really stinks when things go that way. But the end resulting product, once we get things dialed in, is going to be that much better. So I have to try to look at the bright side of things, which can be hard to do sometimes. But on that note, yeah, I got in some 304 stainless, and so I forged the first blade with the 304 stainless, which is an austenitic stainless steel, and so it's not going to harden, and it should be easier to you do the drilling the handle holes and stuff like that, and work with it. So I'm going to try that, because the last stainless steel San Mai I did was with 420 stainless steel, 416, not 420, 416, and that worked pretty good actually. So things are moving along, and I have a bucket of scrap over there that represents probably, I don't want to think about how much it represents, but that's the stuff you don't usually see on camera. Like I still show, like when I made a mistake on this or whatever, and there's quite a few. There's a number of different videos where I show that, but you know, this isn't a thing where you just kind of sit there and punch a button and something, you know, comes off of a conveyor belt. And if you're trying new techniques and everything, there's always a research and development or learning curve involved with it, and it can be rough sometimes. So that's kind of been how it's been going, but I think we're getting through this little rough patch, and I'm going to keep working on stocking up product, especially, you know, all the stuff. On that note, a little mini announcement, I guess, here, or pre-announcement, and that is, if you are in the Lubbock, Texas area, we're in the Lubbock region. That's as close as I'm gonna say, since, you know, this is the internet. For those who are within driving distance, or, like, you know, striking distance of Lubbock, I'm working on a local venue for the area there. And so what that would mean is that you can come and say hi, buy a knife, you know, see the stuff in person, whatever. And so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Actually, I got to work on some stuff, but it looks like we're gonna be doing a venue. It'll be a weekly venue, not a permanent store or anything like that. But that's exciting. Haven't done anything like that in almost 4 years, and not since we've been in Texas. So for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be working on stocking up product just in general, and for that venue, hopefully here in the next month or so. So if you're in the Lubbock area, stay tuned, because there might be an opportunity for you to stop by and say hi, check out some knives, etc., etc. Well, I'm going to sign off here, and appreciate you guys watching. Just wanted to give you a little update, kind of, and clarify why this is a template only, and that's kind of it. I hope you guys have a great Easter or Resurrection Sunday weekend, celebrating the risen Lord, and I will see you on the next video.